Someone asked, why do teenagers masturbate so much? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the teenage behavior to masturbate. In this video, we're going to be talking about the different views that are conflicting on masturbation, and we're going to be talking about teenagers and their developmental processes and how that relates to the practice, and then we're going to talk about what you can do about it. So I'm going to say right at the very beginning, if you are watching this video and you actually have children in the room with you, it's not a good time to watch this video. That's not because I'm going to try to be graphic, but I really don't think we need to present the idea to children, because oftentimes when the idea continually gets presented, this is what actually leads to additional curiosity. Of course, we do need to have conversations with our children about these types of topics, but when and how are very important, and we're going to be talking about that at the end of this video. So self-pleasuring is a normal craving or inclination that someone could have, especially in their teen years. There's a lot of different things that come into play. Number one, there's just hormones, especially for boys, the inclination to masturbate, because the hormones are now suddenly building up sperm and stuff like that, and it has to release, and they actually get like different feelings associated with that production that's happening with the increased hormones. Suddenly they're starting to have wet dreams and stuff like that, which creates the ideas in their head now in these dreams that their parts can and should do other things. There's feelings associated with those things in the dreams, which then just opens the door to curiosity. Now, girls also have increased hormone that's happening. So with that increased hormone, vaginal discharge, those types of things, that's actually ends up creating more of an ability to be stimulated as well. And so this can create an additional problem. Now, usually for girls, they have to be introduced to the idea more than boys do. Sometimes boys get into it, no one ever told them one thing about it, but girls usually are introduced. What the children are exposed to does matter. Now, obviously, boys can be introduced to the idea also very young. Little children can end up self-pleasuring and then create a habit of it, because they can be like, oh, that feels interesting. Oh, that feels nice. And then suddenly they can end up creating a habit that could even last a lifetime if nobody stopped them. So this brings me to the conflicting opinions about self-pleasuring. And I'm just going to say opinions. People try to say, okay, well, I'm going to take this scientific approach and I'm going to say everybody does it, and so it's okay, and everybody needs to learn how to do it and whatever. That's not scientific. That's still just an opinion. It might be scientific that it is possible for everyone to do it, but it is absolutely Keynesian science, which I do not agree with. It's fraudulent, it's self-serving. His sexology science is actually not a healthy science to be pushing on our children. We need to remember that Alfred Kinsey, who was the father of that branch of science, he and other people who were pedophiles took children into the attic of his house and into padded rooms, and starting at 3 months old and up to 13 years old, molested them, just to try to prove that something would happen, that some child might say they like it, or that something would occur. And in his table where he describes what happened to these children that proved that they liked it, there were things like seizures and crying and screaming, and that would say that they liked it. Now, I know this is horrible, and this is why I said don't let the children watch this. We don't need any nightmares or any more questions at this time necessarily. That is the father of the whole idea that everybody should pursue masturbation. So I know in a lot of sexual programs, especially comprehensive sexuality education, there's a lot of talk about it. The word sexuality right now in the modern context, so it used to just mean how your body works in a sexual fashion. Now it means how you like it, the kink, what you you want, all of that kind of stuff. What that means is in the schools, they're actually teaching it in a lot of places around the world. In fact, I have worked for many years trying to combat that type of teaching in my state and in other places around the world as I've consulted at the United Nations and in other countries. But it is being taught. And so if it's presented as a normal thing to do, in fact, as a thing that everyone should try to do, then this actually gives people a false idea of what this is about. I remember one time I was speaking at the United Nations, and the conversation in my presentation related to comprehensive sexuality education and the problems that I had found with it. And I happened to talk about masturbation in particular at the United Nations. And I remember that there was a group of activists who were against my presentation at the UN. That happens all the time. I'm not afraid of that. And one person who was a younger person, she was probably maybe a college freshman, I would say. And she said in a question, well, what's wrong with masturbation? It's healthy. And I said to her, if it calls to you, then are you controlling it or is it controlling you? If that practice, if those chemicals in your body, if that craving makes you have to satisfy it, who's in charge? Because what I found is that leads to addiction. I had a lot of foster children in my home when I did therapeutic treatment care for many years for troubled teens, and many of them struggled with sexual addiction, especially because they had been molested or sexually abused by somebody. I had to help them learn how to control that craving and that habit to masturbate. That was a long, hard process for them, because to break that type of habit is huge. But I will never forget, there were two girls on two different circumstances who had been sexually abused repeatedly. So they had developed this habit of self-pleasuring. Both of them came to me at different times and said, Nicholeen, I finally feel like I'm free. I finally feel like I am in control of my own body. Because for a long time, I have felt like I am the slave of my body and whatever it wants. And that so long as I'm the slave of my body, I'm going to be the slave of anybody. And to me, that was worth all that trouble to help them overcome that addiction. Masturbating releases chemicals in the brain, endorphins and stimulants, dopamine, just like a drug would. Plus, there's also oxytocin, which is released because it's like a touching thing. And so there's a lot of powerful chemicals that happen in the brain. And then when you bring in the hormones and things that lead to orgasmic sensations, it's absolutely one of the most powerful cravings to try to push against. And when a person knows they can control it, it gives them the sense of complete power and authority over themselves. And that's what I wanted for my children always. And so I did not tell them that, oh, well, everybody does masturbate and you should. Nope, I took a different approach. I said, everybody's body does get pleasure when it's touched in certain ways, but you can get into bondage that way too. And you have to decide who's going to be in control. And if it happens, talk to me about it and we'll help you not develop a habit. I'm not going to shame them for it because it's something that could happen to anybody. We're going to treat it logically, matter-of-factly, and we're going to help them learn to accept a no answer. So this is the Teaching Self-Government channel. If you've subscribed to this channel already, you probably know that I talk a lot about skills. Well, one of the skills that I've mentioned in multiple videos is the skill accepting a no answer. A person who's truly self-governed can give themselves a no answer and accept it and drop the subject. So if they have a thought in their head of something they should do, they can consciously tell themselves no, and then drop the subject and move on. It takes practice, but it's absolutely possible. Self-government is the difference between freedom and bondage. And that's what this whole channel is about. We've just barely scratched the surface here, but if you've enjoyed this video, I'm quite sure you'll enjoy my next video, which is actually a full-length class. It'll be a great introductory to a lot of the skills and principles of self-government, and it's called The Not-So-Known Secret for Parenting Success. Click on the link to that video now. I'll see you there.